thousands of child pedestrians being hit each year. Lastly, AB 516 proactively involves parents, teachers, counselors, and others who know the needs of the communities and have a stake in the outcomes as well. This bill is about equity, and when it comes to the protection of children's health and safety, AB 516 ensures that all communities have the ability to benefit from the Safe Routes to Schools program from an equitable viewpoint. Here in support of the measure are two sponsors, Shioni Flegal on behalf of PolicyLink and Lourdes Perez on behalf of Ceres Partnership for Healthy Children. Thank you for considering this bill, and I respectfully ask for your vote.
Very good. Witnesses in favor?
Good afternoon. My name is Shioni Flegal. I'm here on behalf of PolicyLink. We're a national public policy institute based here in California and Oakland. We have a particular interest in advancing equity for low-income communities and communities of color. Our focus includes both work in the area of public health and the area of public infrastructure investments. For this reason, Safe Routes to School is a program that we're particularly interested in making sure serves communities representing a diverse range of economic backgrounds. As the member noted, here in California, childhood obesity rates and pedestrian injuries are highest in low-income communities and communities of color. We recently did a bit of research looking at state crash data to better understand who is being hit. And what we found is that almost 2/3 of all the child, pedestrian, and bicycle injury victims in the last year that data is available for, 2008, almost 2/3 of those crashes happened within 1 mile of a low-income school. For this reason, we feel that this program is critically necessary to address the safety challenges low-income kids face, and we hope that through AB 516 we can better target our limited state resources to serving the communities who really need this money the most. We respectfully ask for your aye vote. Thank you so much.
Please proceed just as fast as you can. We still have a lot of bills to go.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and committee members. My name is Lourdes Perez with Ceres Partnership for Healthy Children, and I am also with Ceres Unified School District Board. We have worked with the Ceres residents through Ceres Partnership on Safe Routes to School programs and have directly seen the folks and the impact that they have with the lack of sidewalks and infrastructure that is needed for safety of the children going to school and from school. We have also submitted applications through the school district and city of Ceres that were not successful, and therefore we ask that you prioritize low-income communities for this type of funding. Public participation is very important as they have the direct information and impact on what the need is in those communities. And we ask, again, for your support on this bill. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Others in support, please make it as brief as humanly possible.
Martha Guzman, California Rural Legal Assistance Foundation, in support.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair and members, I'm Sharon Scott Dow, representing Advancement Project in strong support.
Very good. Thank you very much.
Bill McGavin, Sierra Club, California, in support.
Very good. Next.
Graham Brownstein, State Policy Director, Transform, strong support. We run one of the larger Safe Routes to School programs in the Bay Area and believe this is a great bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Esmeralda Soria with Sierra Leone Foundation and strong support, representing communities in Stanislaus County and also in Tulare County, Tullyville.
Very good. Thank you.
Move the bill.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have anyone in opposition? Not seen anyone. Any questions from the members? Not seen any. Please close.
I respectfully ask for aye vote.
All right. Let's call the roll. Oh, hold on. We do have a question.
Well, I want to give the author a chance to respond to the governor's veto message, which said that low-income areas currently receive higher than their percentage of the market. In other words, it's about a third low income and about 35 to 40% of the grants. And so this is already being met And if you add this as a bonus, then the quality of the applications might actually decline. So he said it really wasn't necessary because it was already being met or exceeded.
Yeah, he told many bills that were very necessary and what she said that weren't. And he was speaking from a perspective of equality, which I can appreciate, but there's a difference between equality and equity. And quite frankly, at the end of the day, we're talking about underserved communities, specifically rural areas that are disproportionately impacted. And so while perhaps there's a percentage that is equal to middle income communities and affluent communities in respect to receiving dollars, when we talk about the fact that disproportionately these communities are impacted when it comes to traffic accidents, when we talk about public health issues, the numbers don't add up. And so we believe that this bill would do just that. It'll really level the playing field for underserved communities.
Very good. Okay. Please proceed with the roll.
Motion to pass is submitted to appropriations. Lowenthal. Jeffries.
Aye.
Jeffries, aye. Ashajian.
Aye.
Ashajian, aye. Blumenfield. Blumenfield, aye. Benia. Benia, aye. Buchanan. Ing. Fiorentani. Galgiani. Logue. Miller. Miller, aye. Norby. Portantino. Solorio.
You can call me.
Solorio. Lowenthal.
Aye.
Lowenthal, aye. 7-0, the bill's on call.
7-0, your bill's on call, Mr. Pettis.
Thank you, members.
Thank you for telling me. Item 8, Mr. Gatto, AB 529. We need a wastebasket. Oh, I'm just trying to. Please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair and
Welcome.
members. So AB 529 represents a significant compromise from its original form, and I want to thank profusely the staff of this committee and the various parties involved, the Automobile Club of Southern California, for working with me to make this a bill that people can stomach. This bill now amends the California Manual of Uniform Traffic Control, or CMU-TCD, sections 2B13, to allow local governments a small amount of discretion and local control in their ability to round down speed limits in their jurisdiction, a privilege which they held until 2004. Traffic surveys established speed limits in the 85th percentile of speed travel on the road. On a lot of local roads, speeds are increasing in residential and mixed-use areas where higher speeds present a danger to the public. If you think about it, members, this is one of the few examples under the law where we let people who might not be currently technically obeying the letter of the law set the law in the future. In 2004, the California Traffic Controls Devices Committee changed the language in anticipation of expected change in federal law to say that a speed limit could be set at the nearest 5 miles an hour increment, forcing locals to round speed limits up in many cases. And the federal change never occurred.
Thank you.
I'd like to move the bill.
Second.
Witnesses in support.
Right. Madam Chair, I need to leave, but I wanted to stay and support the bill. So if I'm not here during the counting of the votes, I'll come back and support it as a yes vote.
Thank you. Witnesses in support.
Did you want to co-author,
Mr.
Mr. Chadjian? Did you want to be amended as a co-author?
No, I'm not asking for amendment. I will support your bill. It's just that I, as a vice chair, I need to be at my banking committee. But in case I'm not here during the vote, I'll come back and register a yes vote.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Witnesses in support, please.
Captain Carl Povolitis from the Glendale Police Department. We would like to register our support for AB 529. Prior to taking this position, I had the privilege of being the Traffic Bureau Commander for the City of Glendale for about 5+ years, dealing with the frontline issues of speed-related issues. And I can tell you from About 20% of our overall collisions are speed-related, and some of the most horrific, tragic situations that we've had have come on streets where we've had to raise speed limits at the expiration of the surveys. We believe this, and in discussing this with my colleagues in other departments, we believe this bill will give us a modicum of control in setting speed limits at an appropriate level, and will allow the speed to be safe for both the motorists that use the road and the other users, including pedestrians and bicyclists. Again, we would urge your support of this bill.
Thank you. Next witness.
Thank you. Chairperson Lowenthal, members of the committee, my name is Wayne Koh. I'm the principal traffic engineer for the city of Glendale. I'm here to fully support the current version of AB 529. This bill would actually give us traffic engineers the flexibility to deal with the dilemma we have since 2004. Specifically, I'm talking about rounding of the 85th percentile speed. It is very difficult for the public to accept an increase, especially for those who live in the area, to accept the increase of a speed limit simply because there was a change in rounding methodologies back in 2004. So any votes in favor of this bill will be truly appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. Other witnesses in support, give your name and affiliation.
Yeah, Hugh Bauer on behalf of the city of Santa Rosa, also in support. Thank you.
Thank you. Witnesses in opposition? Comments from the members? I believe I heard a motion over there, did I not?
There were 4 of them.
Mr. Gatto, would you like to close?
I can move again if you'd like.
I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Thank you. Could you please call the roll?
Motions to pass to local government. Lowenthal?
Aye.
Lowenthal, aye. Jeffries?
Aye.
Jeffries, aye. Ashajian? Blumenfield? Aye. Blumenfield, aye. Bonilla? Aye. Bonilla, aye. Buchanan? Ing? Furutani? Galgiani? Logue? Miller? Miller, aye. Norby?
Aye.
Norby, aye. Portantino? Solorio? Solorio, aye. 7. The bill's on call. 7-0.
7-0. Your bill is on call.
Okay,
Mr.
thank you very
Conway.
much.
Thank you. Ms. Brownlee. Welcome. No, you're not.
There we go. Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members. First, I'd like to accept the committee amendments outlined in the analysis as author amendments. Over the past 2 decades, the opportunity to invest in transportation infrastructure has fallen woefully short of meeting basic needs to serve the state's growing population and dynamic economy. There's a tremendous demand to secure ongoing transit revenues for service operations and maintenance of municipal bus services.
Move the bill. Second.
Thank you.
Continue, please.
A recent study commissioned by the American Public Transportation Association identified the emerging media of digital bus advertising as a potential revenue stream for public transportation agencies. AB 607 would authorize a 5-year pilot program to allow the city of Santa Monica as transit buses to display advertising on illuminated signs that change or stream across only under certain conditions. In other words, buses could be equipped with digital advertising signs. The city's police department would be required to work collaboratively with other local law enforcement agencies, and the CHP is compiling and delivering a report to the legislature on any adverse roadway and pedestrian safety impacts of these displays due by July 1st, 2016. So with that, I think public transit agencies across the state are struggling to close transit operating budget deficits while we need them to continue providing vital transit services to their communities. This is a first step in trying to secure more revenues for these fundamental services. And I have with me today David Feinberg, for the Deputy Director of Transit Services for Santa Monica's Big Blue Bus, who's the sponsor of the bill. Thank you.
Thank you. I've got some pictures of actually
Can you turn your, there you go, it's on.
Yeah, you're on.
Okay.
You're good.
Okay. I've got pictures if you want to take a look at it. We did a demonstration on one of our vehicles, and I'd like to have the sergeant maybe hand those out if you get a chance. Again, my name is David Feinberg. I'm the Deputy Director of the Santa Monica's Big Blue Bus. What this bill would do would actually expand a current state law which allows transit agencies to use digital signs for route information on the front of their buses. This bill would allow the technology to be used for advertising, then sunsets that authority so we can work with the legislature and the CHP to measure the program's effectiveness and also to monitor any safety impacts that might occur. As you always well know, the Big Blue Bus, as well as the state, everybody's having real difficult budget issues. We just raised our fare substantially last year. We're looking at this idea as something to help us in the future without having to go with our riders for another fare increase. Our city council supports the bill. We brought the digital advertisement to our police chief and his management team 2 weeks ago. Very supportive of the bill, of that concept. And we've also had preliminary discussions with the CHP on issues they might have. We're going to either have the CHP come out to the digital ad manufacturer's facility, or they're going to bring the ads to up to Sacramento for them, the CHP, to review the project more closely. We have a 200 bus fleet. We're only asking for these signs to be on 25 of our buses during this pilot period. It's just a test. We want to see what it can do, and obviously, if it's successful, it can really help us raise some revenues in a difficult time. So, thank you in the group in your past for your support of public transit, and we ask that you provide an aye vote on this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jeffries.
I support the bill. I only have one reservation that applies to any bus lighting, and that's the forward-facing and the rear-facing lighting. Obviously, under current vehicle codes of forward-facing red lights, but we also need to address the blue lights, which are now utilized almost exclusively by law enforcement. We have buses that are out there today with forward-facing blue lights, and it honestly looks like it's a law enforcement vehicle coming when the light is flashing across the top. So please keep that in mind as you refine this bill and work it further through. So with that, I support it.
And I appreciate your support and appreciate your comments. And I think the bill does address the issue of being in the front or in the back. And I think it explicitly addresses the red light issue.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if it addresses the blue light issue,
Yeah.
but we can.
Mr. Norby and then Mr. Blumenfield.
If this keeps the big blue bus in the black, then I'm a green light on it. I would only say that every other system in the state ought to have the same prerogative to do this, and rather than them all coming individually to get that permission, I would certainly welcome a bill that allowed them the same opportunities that you'll have if this passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Blumenfield.
Yeah, I'm going to support this. As you know, we have a problem with mobile billboards in the San Fernando Valley and around other areas. And this is a pilot program, so this is good. I would just hope if this pilot program gets moved in the future, that we just make sure that the primary purpose of the bus is always the transit, and that there be safeguards so that we never end up in that situation where buses or any sort of vehicles are being sanctioned to be advertisements in and of themselves as the profit. But as long as it's ancillary to the primary purpose of the bus, I'm okay with it.
Thank you, Mr. Blumenfield, and point well taken. And to address Mr. Norby's issue, and I appreciate your support, and I hope that this pilot project, I think there are some safety concerns. We want to ensure that we can eliminate any of those, if any are raised. And I think after this pilot program, I'm a proud community member of Santa Monica. I'm proud to represent Santa Monica, and the Big Blue Bus is an extraordinary transportation system that Santa Monica provides, and I know that the Big Blue Bus, along with our local public servants, will make sure that we can pave the opportunities for other cities throughout the state of California. And with that, I respectfully would ask for an aye vote.
Thank you, Ms. Brownlee. In today's fiscally constrained times, local governments must be creative in developing new potential revenue sources, and I think your bill allows us to see one of those. So if the state can follow the lead of Santa Monica, we might all do well in the future.
Thank
But
you, Madam Chair.
I am glad it's a pilot project, and there is a motion and a second. So could you call the roll, please?
Motions to pass as amended. Lowenthal?
Aye.
Lowenthal, aye. Jeffries?
Aye.
Jeffries, aye. Shajian? Blumenfield?
Aye.
Blumenfield, aye. Bonilla? Aye. Bonilla, aye. Buchanan? Ing? Fiorentani? Galgiani? Logue? Miller? Miller, aye. Norby? Norby, aye. Portantino? Solorio? 6-0. The bill's on call.
6-0, your bill is on call.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, committee members.
Right? Oh, he did. Mr. Davis, your bill is up.
Perfect timing.
I move the bill.
Feels good to be on time, Madam Chairwoman. It is my privilege to present AB 1291. Oh, wait, is it? Should I prefer? You prefer the other one? Okay. Okay, I will. Since I have witnesses in support here, I will substitute that one right now for AB 868. This bill would increase the limit on hazardous wastewater that can be transported by a utility tanker truck from 1,600 gallons to 5,000 gallons. It will also increase 2,500 pounds to 10,000 pounds the amount of hazardous solids waste that a utility dump truck can transport. I'm committed to addressing the concerns of the Sierra Club and look forward to continuing to work with this club as the bill moves forward in the next policy committee. Currently, utilities frequently need to make multiple trips with only a partial load in their vehicles. This results in delays and increased costs. An increase in the maximum volume of contaminated water and the amount of solid waste would benefit the public. In conclusion, I have with me Bob Lucas from the California Council for the Environmental and Economic Balance, and Alicia Priego from the California Municipal Utilities Association in support of the bill.
Madam Chair, members, Jack Walco with the Gualco Group on behalf of the California Council for Environmental and Economic Balance. This bill that Mr. Davis was kind enough to carry updates the volumes that could be transported in light of the newer technologies and newer vehicles that are in place, and looking on balance, the reduced vehicle miles traveled, the reduced emissions, the decreased opportunities for accidents tells us this is a wise move to make. We've had a good meeting with the Sierra Club, and we look forward to working with them to refine the bill further as the authors indicated. So we very much ask for your aye vote. Thank you.
Madam Chair and members, Alicia Priego with the California Municipal Utilities Association. I apologize for our late letter of support. We are happy to be co-sponsors on this important measure. CMUA represents over 40 electric publicly owned utilities in the state, and we'll associate our support with what the member and Mr. Gualco has stated. But if, essentially, this bill will allow our utilities to operate more efficiently and reduce environmental impacts. Thank you.
Are there any other members, any people, witnesses in support? Witnesses in opposition?
Madam Chair and members, Bill McGavin representing Sierra Club, California. Our position is opposed to this bill. We are concerned about increasing the exemptions from the hazardous waste transportation requirements. We believe that hazardous waste should be transported only by those who are licensed to transport that waste. If that's not the case, we increase the risks of a spill, and I think that's something that we all want to avoid. There are a number of issues that we think are unresolved, despite the conversation that we had last week. And those issues include narrowing all the exemptions to utilities, narrowing the contaminants that could be included in both the solid and liquid hazardous waste that are exempted under the bill. The rationale for these very much increased new levels under exemption, and the question of how the requirements would be implemented and enforced to make sure that the waste being transported would be only those that were specified under language in the bill and the bill as proposed to be amended. So without having those concerns addressed, we are opposed to the bill.
Any other witnesses in opposition? Comments from members? Mr. Davis, as you know, we worked with you and your sponsors to try to resolve this with the opposition. And so my question to you is, according to what Mr. McGavern just said, do you believe that if we move the bill out today, that you would be able to resolve those issues that he brought up before the next committee? Because I only want to personally make that vote to pass it out if you've made a commitment to resolve those issues.
Yes, Madam Chairwoman, we have met personally with him last week and did verbally make that commitment to him. And as you have heard in my opening statement, as a result of the work of my staff and the witnesses in support, as well as his input, we have concluded that we will work together with him to resolve the differences. And I think he can confirm, having had that meeting in my office where I also was present.
Well, I'm going to be recommending moving that out with that understanding, because transporting hazardous waste is something that each and every community of California needs to know that they will be protected completely.
Absolutely.
And was there a motion? There was a motion, and a second. Did you close, Mr. Davis?
Yes, ma'am. I thank you for the indulgence as chairwoman and the committee for participating and listening at the resolution to what has truly been a problem. This bill would decrease in the amount of time in which streets near an electrical vault have to be closed while the vault is having the water removed. It would also decrease the number of trucks on the road, which would reduce the greenhouse gas emissions produced by these vehicles. And finally, it would decrease in the amount of time it would take the utility to restore a service interruption caused by a flooded underground vault. Once again, we're committed to work with all of the parties, both those in support as well as the challenges presented by the Sierra Club. I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Thank you very much, Madam Secretary. Could you call the roll?
The motions to pass to Environmental Safety and Toxics Committee. Lowenthal.
Aye.
Lowenthal, aye. Jeffries.
Aye.
Jeffries, aye. Ashajian. Blumenfield. Blumenfield, aye. Bonilla. Bonilla, aye. Buchanan. Ing. Furtani. Furtani, aye. Galgiani. Logue. Miller. Miller, aye. Norby.
Aye.
Norby, aye. Portantino. Solorio. 7-0, the bill's on call.
7-0, Mr. Davis, your bill is on call.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. The final bill, Madam Chairwoman, I'm presenting today is AB 1291. This creates a specific policy statement by the legislature for the Department of Motor Vehicles to work with private sector technology partners to further develop and evaluate technologies for their potential to generate cost savings or efficiencies for the department in the vehicle registration process. The bill is intended further to encourage the Department of Motor Vehicles to work with companies on technology projects to ensure The solution envisioned will indeed function to reduce fixed costs and provide other cost savings prior to spending money to purchase technology that might fail to fully meet the department's need as well as it was originally envisioned. The bill requires the Department of Motor Vehicles to follow normal procurement procedures and include within an existing annual report any activity they engage in under this bill. The analysis points out that the law does not need to be changed in order for the Department of Motor Vehicle to act. That is certainly true. The DMV has currently authority to pursue technology projects. It is my understanding that the department's current priority has been the use of new technology related to their customer service function, such as reducing wait times in field offices, increasing online transactions, and providing greater phone support, scheduling ability, and returning calls, something we can all appreciate and commend. In approving this bill, the legislature is simply providing policy direction to spur state agencies to encourage in all possible efforts to generate cost savings. Since this bill is not a mandate, it represents no harm, no foul approach to the Department of Motor Vehicles exploring new technologies where we may be able to achieve cost savings for minimal risk. Governor Jerry Brown's Office of Economic Development has stated AB 1291 can be used as a tool in supporting our product and service commercialization efforts within California's innovation infrastructure. Forging these types of partnerships between public and private sectors stimulate economic growth. I have with me Mr. Jim Lights and Mr. Neville Boston in support of the bill.
Jim Lights, representing SmartPlate Mobile. As the state continues to be challenged by severe fiscal constraints, this bill represents a potentially low risk and meaningful cost saving opportunity to work with private sector technology companies to achieve cost savings at the Department of Motor Vehicles. We urge your support. Thank you.
Madam Chair and members, my name is Johnny Carter. No worries. I'm a co-founder of SmartPlate Technologies and in support of AB 1291. We believe this bill serves as an important policy statement that supports the ongoing commitment DMV has expressed to implement the use of new technologies to better serve the public. And we feel such policy statements by the legislature are important to spur greater partnership with the technology community. I would ask for your aye vote. Thank you.
Mr. Furutani.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I want to thank Mr. Davis for bringing this bill. I think it's important to encourage all of our departments to look at technology and ways to improve and become more efficient and creative relative to what we do in all of our departments. I understand also sometimes technology is a double-edged sword. I mean, any of us that have been to presentations where they use different technology, half the time it doesn't seem to work. But I don't think that should discourage us. So I think it's a very good bill, and I would like to move the bill, please.
I did not ask for anyone in opposition. Are there witnesses in opposition? Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any other comments?
Let's just, I mean, if I may take a cheap shot, not at you. The technology employed with our new driver's licenses has proven to be a disaster. But with DMV's vendor, I don't necessarily fault DMV, but this is a case where technology is clearly letting us down somewhere along the line. We actually now have Californians who cannot get through airport security because TSA is not, in fact, letting them through with expired licenses, and they cannot get new ones. So I do, however, support the bill. I do support the drive to increase technology, which I hope increases efficiency on the end side of it and generates, if possible, new revenues. But efficiency is what I'm looking for without any increased cost to the consumer. So you have my support. And sorry to use my soapbox.
No, that's fine. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Davis, I really appreciate that this bill takes a much more modest approach than previous proposals. which had the potential to turn our license plates into mobile billboards. And I agree, along with my colleagues, that the DMV should pursue all technologies that have a reasonable chance of making their operations more efficient and cost-effective, and thus our streets safer. But I would note that there's no authority that's granted by this bill that DMV does not already have. Given that the bill is not really necessary because of that, I will personally be staying off the bill, and I have no recommendation for my colleagues. Would you like to close, Mr. Davis?
Sure. This bill presents an opportunity in the state for us to be more efficient and more effective, and not at the mercy of the philosophy of department chairmen, but rather provide an infrastructure in our law and policy that will do two things that are important to our state. As was mentioned by your committee member, Mr. Jeffries, we want to ensure that we not only pursue technologies, but that the technologies that we pursue are effective and efficient. And so the provision in this bill will ensure that we do some exploration prior to signing an agreement with such technological individuals who pursue agreements with us on one hand. And then on the other hand, it provides a permanent structure regardless of whomever the chairman of a department is, that will result in the best cost savings for which Californians deserve. I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. Could you call the roll, please?
The motions to pass to appropriations. Lowenthal. Jeffries.
Aye.
Jeffries, aye. Ashajian. Blumenfield. Blumenfield. I'm sorry. Blumenfield, aye. Bonilla. Bonilla, aye. Buchanan. Ing. Furtani.
Yes.
Furtani, aye. Galgiani. Logue. Miller. Norby. Porgentino. Solorio. 4-0. Buchanan, aye. 5-0. The bill's on call.
5-0. Your bill is on call.
Thank you, Madam Chairman and
Thank you,
committee
Mr.
members.
Davis. AB 85, Mr. Cook. Mr. Cook. Followed by Ms. Ma and Mr. Jones.
Fiona will never forgive me for bumping her, but
please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Every year, an estimated 800,000 children are reported missing, more than 105,000 in California alone. This equates to more than 2,000 children each day. In perhaps the worst cases, those involving child abduction by sex offenders, the outcome is often tragic. This is a clear indication we need better tools to help law enforcement in dealing with this problem. AB 885 will help in the identification of certain sex offenders, which will assist law enforcement in keeping children safe. In some situations, it is necessary for law enforcement to have immediate access to information that indicates whether someone is a sex offender. When certain types of sex offenders are issued a driver's license or identification card or a renewal of that card, this bill would require the Department of Motor Vehicles to include information identifying them as sexual offenders on the metallic strips of the card. It would require those sexual offenders to have this identification on them at all times. Finally, it would require current photograph address verification for the original license, the original identification card for each renewal. These provisions would only apply to certain felons, those convicted as sexually violent predators are those convicted of sexual crimes against a child as described in Penal Code Section 290, felony convictions. Now, last year I introduced a similar bill which dealt with a distinguishing mark on a driver's license. And there were concerns about the so-called scarlet letter, which would subject sexual offenders to harassment. That is why this bill has been changed and contains the identifying information on the card's magnetic strip, which would protect privacy as well as proactively protecting children. One of the most important provisions in this bill is a requirement that they carry this at all times. The reason I'm carrying this bill, and I carried it last year, involved a case by the individual by the name of Mr. Mo Dubois. His daughter was abducted, she was raped, and she was killed. And some of the data that came out from this, and a lot of it had to do with Mo's own research into this, and he has become an advocate, and he normally is one of my witnesses. He's not here today, is that time is of the essence. So we ran a similar bill last year with Pedro Nava. We were successful in getting 3 bills passed and signed. And a lot of it was this time frame, this very, very important time frame, that you would actually have some form of identification of people that the police might be looking for in an area where a child had been abducted. This hopefully would correct the situation. The actual money for this was also a factor. It would not divert any motor vehicle account money to pay for these licenses. Instead, DMV would be authorized to charge the recipients of this license a fee covering the cost of it. This would provide a quick method to alert law enforcement in the presence of a sexual offender, somebody that has a history of this because of the high recidivism rate and normally the connection that they could further investigate that or broaden the search and hopefully prevent a similar tragedy from happening again. That concludes my testimony.
Thank you. Witnesses in support.
As I mentioned, Mr. Mo Dubois
is not here.
He couldn't make it today.
Witnesses in opposition. Comments from members? Mr. Norby.
I appreciate your concern for the kids. I've got 4 and 1 on the way. But I do have some concerns here. I communicated them to your office. Mr. Cook, I was on the road at the time until the session started. And it's not so much with this bill in particular, but how broad a net has been cast in defining people as sexual predators. There was a case just a couple of years ago in San Diego County. A Marine was stationed at Camp Pendleton. He was from Ohio. I think he was about 21, 22. And he had a relationship with a local high school girl. I think she was a senior. And it was a serious relationship in all respects. Her father didn't approve and called the DA, and he was up for charges on becoming a sexual predator since she was underage. I learned about this case from a lawyer that he was able to obtain by raising some money, and he was able to get him off, but it was a very close call, and I know there are other cases out there like this, also cases involving public urination, cases involving other types of activity that have been in this net of sexual offenses, which I think is so broad that it doesn't really focus on those people that the public should be concerned about. Before I support a bill like this, I'd like to make sure that the people that you want to target are those that are actually being targeted, as opposed to a lot of people that have been caught up in this and that really don't belong there.
Yeah. If I could respond, Madam Chair.
Yes, please.
Yeah, this bill is not designed to go after people that had urinated in public against a tree or something like that. it does state that it is a felony. And I know you're concerned, and I was going to propose an amendment because in the bill it suggested those convicted as sexually violent predators or those convicted of sexual crimes against a child, to take out or and put in and, which would certainly limit the universe and would exclude those other individuals. You're talking about the most serious felons that have a predisposition to this type of violence. So instead of having just one category, you now have two. It would be very, very limited, obviously. And your examples, I don't think, would fall under that, and I would be happy to research those to see if somebody that had something like that was brought by the father or something. I don't think they fall in that category whatsoever.
I'll move the bill.
Second.
Yes, Ms. Bonilla, and then Ms. Buchanan.
I really do support what you're trying to accomplish in terms of identifying predators within our society. I would just comment that I did have a Cal ID bill before this committee last week that I think really will serve this purpose. It's the mobile fingerprint system that 30 counties in our state are using this, so that no longer can a perpetrator lie about their identity if they have a record. The minute they give their fingerprint, their true name and identity and crimes would show up immediately to the officer who was administering that mobile identification. So I think it's certainly we're trying to move in the right direction here of identifying these people, not letting them use pseudonyms or false names, apprehending them right at the very, very critical moment. So I won't be supporting this particular bill, but wanted to reassure you that I'm with you in trying to identify who these folks are and get them held accountable for all of their acts.
Ms. Buchanan.
Could you explain to me who would be able to read this information off the driver's license cards?
Just law enforcement officers.
But law enforcement has the database available to them already, right?
They do, but talking to law enforcement and some of the data we have, it's not available to, you're talking about the Megan's Law database in the internet that they have to go in to retrieve that. It's not always current. The problem is the time availability in terms of getting that where you run the check on it. If you remember, some of you might have remembered the bills we ran last year in regards to this. The key element was about the clock ticking. When somebody leaves and talking to law enforcement, sometimes there's some glitches in the system and it takes a while for this. This is by looking right away. And there has been an abduction, then at least there would be serious scrutiny on this individual that had that if they were in the immediate vicinity. One of the examples that Mo had used in the past was there might be a child's blanket or a teddy bear, as gruesome as that might seem, in the back seat of the car, which ordinarily wouldn't raise any eyebrows, but based upon the history that would be identified right there. As it might cause the individual to at least open up the trunk.
I like Assemblymember Bonilla, appreciate what you're trying to do, but when you read the staff comments, I just think you've got so many pitfalls in this. One is, whether or not if law enforcement has a hard time with information, exactly how we expect DMV to make sure the information is always accurate, because if it's not, you also run into problems. And there's, if someone decides not to show their driver's license, you don't have the information. So it just seems to me that while the goal is there, I don't see how on a practical level this is going to work or improve what we're doing.
Okay. If I could say, if you do believe in conceptually what I'm talking about, I'm certainly open to amendments on this to make it better. I have talked to law enforcement, and they do agree that time is of the essence. And in San Diego County, of course, we had multiple tragedies. We just had one in Moreno Valley a few months ago, and far too often these are unsolved. I don't know if this, I would hope that this bill would be a step in the right direction. I can't guarantee that this is going to be a panacea or the perfect solution. Or
I understand that. For someone who's a perpetrator, I just don't understand why, if they know this information is on their license, why, if they get pulled over, they're going to show their license to a police officer.
Mr. Cook, if I may, a witness opposing the bill just arrived, and if you don't mind, I'd like to have him speak. He was late.
Can you object and still let him happen?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ignacio Hernandez, on behalf of the California Attorneys for Criminal Justice, we are opposed to the bill. It's in deference to the committee because I was late. I'll leave my comments at that. If there are any questions, I will answer them. But I thank you for letting me at least stating my opposition on the record.
Thank you. And I also wanted to ask DMV if they could answer a couple questions. Who wanted to ask the questions? Ms. Galgiani, did you want to ask the DMV? No, it's different. Oh, yeah, there were. We wanted a better understanding of the magnet strip on the driver's license and who could read them and how limited that would be.
Mm-hmm. Madam Chair and members, Barbara Rooney with the DMV. The mag stripe that's on the back of the card essentially is everything you see on the face of the card. So in terms of the question earlier, who can access the mag stripe? Anyone who has a mag stripe reader. So that wouldn't just be law enforcement, that would be retailers as well.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. Any other comments? Ms. Galgiani.
Assemblymember Nornby commented earlier on the particular case where it could be that someone who wasn't guilty of doing something terribly violent could get caught up in this. And I just wanted to comment that, I know that there are cases out there like that, but there are also other cases to the other extreme where we have people that have gotten off and have gotten away with murder that have lesser charges. And I know Assemblymember Dan Logue knows exactly what I'm going to talk about. Where someone was just released into his district that's from my district that was originally convicted of killing 4 people, one of those being a 16-year-old girl. And because of a plea bargain, he is now out on parole. So there are other extremes, and I would just encourage you to be very carefully take a look at whatever the definition is that you settle on, because oftentimes, like in this man's case, Lauren Herzog, he was finally convicted after a plea bargain of voluntary manslaughter and accessory to a felony. Never mentioned that accessory to a felony was first-degree murder and that there were multiple murders. It just counts as accessory to a felony. So I would just caution that you look very carefully at whatever that is.
Members, we have another half a dozen bills, so I would like to caution us to move on. If there are no other comments,
Can I respond to the DMV, please?
Yes, could you please respond?
No, I understand that, but the understanding was that there would be a code in there that would only be interpreted by police officers.
Okay.
Thank you. Would you like to close?
No, as I said, the purpose of this bill is, after talking to Mr. Dubois and the tragedy that went through, the key essential element was time and whether you could identify somebody that was in that area. It doesn't change the penalties per se. That's an entirely different issue, but this would hopefully give law enforcement an opportunity to identify certain individuals that were in the area and act accordingly. I ask for your aye vote.
Thank you very much. Mr. Cook, I completely understand the motivation for this bill. I think all of us on this panel agree that we have concerns for the safety of our children and our neighborhoods. And we agree that the identification of sex offenders is crucial to effective enforcement. But I don't believe that this bill would further that cause. It seems to me counterintuitive that an individual intent on committing a sex crime would carry a document that identifies him